All right, so I am setting up a stop motion animation activity, and we're learning about basic principles of animation, and we're going to do a simple, straightforward bouncing ball. We're going to do a bouncing ball that includes squash and stretch, and we're going to do a ball that bounces from the side and try to mimic the physics of what that would look like. So we're using an app called Stop Motion Studio, and you can get it for free, and it does a lot for free. If you pay $7, it's got full functionality and you can do a lot more. So I've got the $7 version, but I think anything that I'm showing can be done in the free version. So we need to click on New Video. So this area of my house is what I've determined is the best spot for this, because I can tape my phone down here so that it's stable. And I've got lots of light coming in through this window over here, and then I can just put my canvas on the floor. So using earbuds that come with, can you show this? Using earbuds that come with any iPhone can also double as a remote shutter. So what I want to do is just find a place for this to go in here. There we go. And what I've done is tape this to the side of the table over here so that it's just easy to access. I want to position my canvas down here. So I've got a blank sheet and I've got a very light timing chart here because I want it to, I want the timing to be correct. I want it to ease out when it's coming from the top of its bounce. I want it to speed up as it's going down. So I need the position of each frame to be further apart as it's going faster, and then as it comes back up, these are closer together because it's going slower. So what I did was I did the first, third, 2/3, and the final one, and then I took the section in the first third, cut it in half, took that section, cut it in half again, took that section, cut it in half again, in order to figure out where my frames need to be to have a slow in, slow out. So I'm going to put this down here, and what I'm going to do is just use pieces of masking tape on the back to keep it still and figure out where it needs to go. Like that. 2 should be fine. So I want this to be up here. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out where I want this to be. So I want to zoom in on this a little bit. So I'm going to click here. Click here, and I am going to zoom in a little bit so I can see this better. I have to click done so I can see where that's going to go. It's pretty good, but I want it to be in the middle of my frame. Like that. I'm just going to press my tape down so that it's not going to move. Okay, so now what I want to make sure, so I've cut out 3 different circles here, and one is close to a perfect circle, I mean roughly cut out without spending too much time on it, and one is that same circle, about the same size, but stretched, and then one is in between the two. And I'm going to vary these depending on at which point I want the ball to be squashed, because as it's coming down to the bottom, down here, it's going to look squashed as it hits the ground. So I have to alternate which one I put out there. So now what I'm going to do is just take the circle and I'm going to put it at the top according to my timing chart. Okay, for my bouncing ball drawing, I decided to make a timing chart like this. Pretty simple. So the highest pose is going to be up here, and that was going to be number 1. So I'll draw a ball right there. At the bottom, I've got where it hits the ground, but I wanted it to slow in, hit, and bounce back up quickly. So I'm going to break down the areas into thirds. I'm going to put a pose there, a pose there, a pose there. Now, to make it go slowly at the top or to kind of hang in the air and come back down, I'm going to divide this part in half. I'm going to shoot another pose there. I'm going to divide this part in half and shoot another pose in between there. So I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to repeat these over and over so that it slows, comes down. Because as the balls are further apart, the faster it will go. The closer that they are together, the slower that they'll go. So this is going to look like it's going to hang, bounce back, hang, bounce back. Now I'm going to add squash and stretch as well. So as it's on its way down, at the very top, I will have kind of a perfect circle. But as it's coming down, I'm going to switch to somewhat of an oval. And then here, it's going to be at its fullest stretched position. And then here, it's actually going to squash. So what I'm going to do is shoot one more right here before it hits. And then I'm going to do a squash right there. So it's going to look like it squashes and then bounces back up. Let's see how it goes. All right, so now I can start doing my exposures. So what I want to do is make sure that according to my timing chart here and my very faint vertical line that I've drawn, that the ball's in the middle of the vertical line and the top horizontal line, which I can see there. Take an exposure, bring it down to the next one. Just keep moving it down like this. Once I get down to this fourth line here, I want to switch it out for the medium stretched one because we're going to exaggerate the motion of the ball falling and stretching. And then I'm going to use that for one exposure, and now it should be at full stretch as it's coming down to this spot. And the exposures are getting further apart because the animation is going faster. Go down like that. Now I'm going to do one more right here close to the bottom. And then I'm going to swap that out, or actually I'm just going to turn that. I'm going to use the same one, and it will look like it's squashed horizontally as it hits the ground. And then it's going to come back up. I'm going to use the medium squash one. It starts to come up. And then I'm going to turn this way. Switch this out for full stretch. Switch it out for medium stretch as it's coming into the slow out, so it would be regaining shape as it's getting to the top of its bounce. Let's move this over. These get hard to pick up. And then as it's getting to the top here for these 3 exposures, it's going to be back in its full shape. And I just keep repeating this over and over until I get the full animation. So if I want to, I can go back over here and I can see all of my frames. So I've done 17 frames so far, and I can go through it slowly. So that is a blank one that I did by accident, so I'll tap that, hit delete. There's my first one. I can go through slowly, and it's slowly morphing down like that. Squash, bounces back up, kind of hangs in the air a little bit the way a ball would, and then it's going to come back down. So now I'm just going to continue this for about 4 or 5 more bounces, and that will be it for animation number 1 with squash and stretch. After mastering the straight up and down bouncing ball, the next step is to do a ball that bounces from the side. So the tricky part here is trying to figure out the trajectory that the ball would bounce. The trajectory that you see on the screen right now
would probably be for like quite a springy, perky, bouncy ball. It's really springing up quite a bit, but it's still losing energy as it's moving from left to right. So once we have our trajectory plan, the next step is to plot where the various frames would go. It can be helpful to add frame numbers to each of these kind of frame guides and this timing chart here so that I can write that on my stop motion sheet and then actually place the balls on those particular spots. So that's what I'm going to do now.